Our project title was How Knowledgeable Are Healthcare Workers in Nursing Facilities About Communication Disorders? This is Hannah Schwartz and Sammy Haynes. For our basic overview, we wanted to survey nursing facilities in and around Greensboro about their knowledge about communication disorders such as dementia, aphasia, and dysarthria. Our goal is to look at 20 nursing facilities within 30 miles of Greensboro, which may include Burlington, Jamestown, High Point, Archdale, for some examples. We wanted to look at the people who spend the most time with the residents, such as certified nursing aides, activity directors, licensed practical and vocational nurses, and registered nurses. Our question: what is the disconnect between education, training, and knowledge about communication disorders and the amount of resident contact various healthcare workers have in nursing facilities? The problem is people who have the most contact with residents, for example, nursing aides, may not have as much education and knowledge in communication disorders and effective communication techniques. This lack of knowledge creates a lack of communication, reducing the quality of life of the residents.
The first article that helped lead us to our hypothesis was called Teaching Nursing Assistant Students About Aphasia and Communication. It was written by Welsh and Szabo in 2011. Welsh and Szabo designed a quantitative and qualitative feasibility study of an education program at a community college for nursing aides, using volunteer persons with aphasia as the educators, along with a speech pathologist. A within-subject convenience sample totaling 262 students from Bergen Community College in New Jersey were selected, and participants were given quantitative pre- and post-surveys, as well as qualitative interviews. The interviews were completed by an interviewer independent of the study to reduce bias and demonstrate improvements of the aphasia-specific training. The scaled survey results had an independent categorization of variables, and if there was indecision about the categorization, both researchers would meet and discuss to reach a consensus. The pre-training survey results suggested that nurse aid students should be given more extensive training on communication disorders. In the pre-survey results, the questions were as follows. Aphasia can affect a person's ability to read and write. Only 50% answered correctly. Chronic aphasia patients will continue to improve after 2 years. Only 57% answered this question correctly. Aphasia can affect intelligence. Only 70% answered this question correctly. Only 68% agreed that patients with aphasia can make decisions about their health care in life situations. Following the 75-minute training program, each of these percentages raised significantly, ranging from a 14 to a 32% increase. Interviews following the trainings and surveys concluded that over 90% of nursing aides would incorporate at least 2 of the strategies they had learned when communicating with a person with aphasia. The strengths of the study include independent categorization of variables, structured interviews by an unbiased interviewer, and pre- and post-tests to measure success of the training program. The collaborating patients with aphasia were selected from a non-for-profit organization, and they shared their perspectives and ideas of effective communication strategies with the students. The weaknesses of the study lay primarily in the study design, as it was a within-subject, convenience sample selection from one community college. Results cannot be accurately generalized to meet all nurse aid training programs. Although the researchers were not the presenters of the training materials, there could have been conversations about the survey and interview questions between both parties, creating a biased presentation to match the survey. Due to time constraints, the study concluded with the interview and post-survey results. They did not proceed to assess generalization or utilization of the communication strategies learned in the clinical setting. This study showed that nurse aid students are lacking in knowledge of aphasia, a primary communication disorder. Without this study, the students wouldn't have received education about it. Most training programs that do exist do not include a person with a communication disorder as part of the training. Therefore, they lack the direct insight of the individuals they are looking to aid. There has been a shift in disability from being only medical issues to a whole person approach, focusing on medical and social aspects as well as quality of life. A lack of communication disorder knowledge has the potential to lead to environmental barriers in nursing facilities, and this can create adverse effects on participation, individualized care plans, quality of life, and general outcomes for the residents.
The second article that led us to our hypothesis was titled Sharing Knowledge with Nursing Home Staff, an Objective Investigation. This study was done by Shaw and May in 2001. This study conducted was survey-based research that looked at nursing home staff's knowledge in swallowing and communication. 8 nursing homes agreed to partake in the communication aspect of training. 47 participants between the 8 nursing homes were comprised mostly of care staff, trained nurses, and a few kitchen staff. An identical pre- and post-questionnaire was given to each participant. The questions were rated with 3 responses: items that were not known by the participants, items the participants did know, these were the target answers, and items that held misconceptions. Post-questionnaire showed a highly significant reduction in items not known by participants, furthermore showing improvement in target answers. The biggest improvement observed involved neurological disorders leading to communication problems. Mixed results with technical words such as dysphagia, dysarthria, and dementia were present. Question 5 of the questionnaire involved technical words such as dysphagia, dysarthria, and dementia. This question yielded mixed results suggesting misconceptions and misunderstanding of the technical terminology. In conclusion, the study suggested training of nursing home staff in communication and swallowing disorders was indeed effective. One big strength noted was the identical pre- and post-questionnaires that were filled out so the study would remain objective. Another strength of the study was a pilot study that was conducted before the main study. This pilot study included just 2 nursing homes, and this helped provide information to modify the questionnaires for the main study. These results were excluded from the main study's results. One limitation of the study was the size. There are only 47 participants in the communication disorders training. Another limitation of the study in general was that one of the pre- and post questions on the questionnaire focused on technical terms such as dysphagia, and these terms really confused most of the participants. The results of the post-test showed an increase in knowledge, but there was also an increase in misconceptions. This suggested a weak understanding of technical terminology. If this terminology is required to be known, deeper training would be necessary for all nursing home healthcare workers. The biggest way this relates to our study is in supporting our hypothesis that the healthcare workers that work most closely with nursing home residents don't have a lot of training in communication disorders and how to support efficient communication. Further training with communication disorders and compensatory strategies would indeed be beneficial to healthcare workers. The study's conclusion helps support this hypothesis.
The third article to help lead us to our hypothesis was called In a Manner of Speaking, Communication Between Nurse Aides and Older Adults in Long-Term Care Settings. It was written by Carpac Claver and Levy Storms in 2007. In a qualitative descriptive study, they provided evidence for greater need of nurse aide training to communicate with cognitively impaired verbal and nonverbal residents. This overt operational research study, based on the ground theory, analyzed the amount and type of communication between the nurse aides and residents of 3 different nursing facilities. The 2 types of communication found were either instrumental, with a functional purpose, or affective, having a focus on rapport building and respect with the residents. 23 interactions were video-audio recorded for later playback, with 17 different nurse aide variations. Interactions were transcribed and categorical communication variables were distinguished by two researchers, independent of one another to reduce bias. The characteristics of the participants correlate with the generalized population of long-term care facilities across the United States. Nurse aides were recruited during staff meetings in which only 55% agreed to participate. Their education ranged from not completing high school to some with a bachelor's degree. Most aides were from a minority ethnic group, primarily Asian or Latin American influence, and had English as a second language. This study demonstrated that the more nonverbal or cognitively impaired a resident was, the shallower and more instrumental the communication exchanges were. This finding suggests that training programs should have a focus on establishing rapport with residents, problem solving, and learning appropriate communication strategies that are culturally appropriate. Effective communication is crucial for building a rapport, having conversations, and improving the quality of life for residents. The strengths of this study include a population representative to those in other nursing facilities, transcription of verbal and nonverbal communication, and a limited bias due to independent raters. Weaknesses of the study are the sample size and lack of randomization of the samples. Due to this lack of adequate representation, the data cannot be accurately generalized to other populations. The findings must be considered more like a working hypothesis rather than a standard result. Effective communication has previously been shown to be beneficial for residents of all functioning abilities. If the communication exchanges are primarily instrumental or functional, there is a high probability that the resident's quality of life will be reduced. Personal relationships and social interactions represent vital needs among residents of a long-term care facility. Moving to a long-term care facility disrupts residents' relationships with friends and family, as there are fewer opportunities for the development and maintenance of personal connections. If nurse aides are unaware of communication disorders and how to interact with a resident who has them, then they may provide only instrumental communication opportunities. And even these have potential to be severely limited and inadequate.
This leads us back to our current study. After looking at nursing facility demographics, we noted almost half of the residents had dementia and almost half had depression. Residents were primarily non-Hispanic white female. While looking at nursing facility demographics in regards to the staff, it's important to note that almost 80% of the services provided are from nursing aides. As mentioned in the previous slide, most residents are from a non-Hispanic white English-speaking population. Approximately 70% of healthcare staff are from minority groups that may or may not have English as a second language. Our type of study is going to be comparative research design. It will include quantitative and qualitative data to look at various types of healthcare workers. The survey will include categorical and continuous variables. The categorical will include staff position held, years of experience, education/training location, and degree or certificate, amount of daily resident contact in their primary language. Continuous variables will be questions asked regarding their knowledge of techniques and disorders. They will include open-ended questions about strategies they use in the population they spend the most time with. The participants will be healthcare workers such as social workers, activity directors, physical occupational therapists, registered, licensed, and vocational nurses, and certified nursing aides. There will be approximately 20 nursing facilities within a 30-mile radius of Greensboro.
To conclude, our hypothesis is if there is not enough education, training, and knowledge about communication disorders and communication strategies, then worker-residents' communication will be negatively impacted. Our preliminary research showed that often the healthcare workers with the most contact hours with residents had the least amount of education and training, and therefore they felt inadequate at communicating with the residents that had communication disorders. This research provides the groundwork for our current study.
If interested in further information, here are our references.